Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.
This is Griffin Conan.
This is Xavier Edwards.
This is Liam Hicks.
This is Dave Myers, and you're watching Fish on First live.
Fish on First live. Once again, an unconventional timing of this one, sandwiched in between these two series. We're heading into 4th of July weekend on the 3rd of July. Right here, I'm Eli Sussman again. We are presented by About the Fans. You know the drill. The code is in the bottom of the screen. FOF10 at checkout to save 10% off your order to get hats, t-shirts, stickers, etc. We'll have new stuff coming up very, very soon to add to that collection as well at aboutthefans.com. So along with Kevin Barral on my side, Isaac Kazoot, Alex Carver, this really lined up absolutely perfectly because Matt Trueblood, special guest, managing editor of both Twins Daily and Brewer Fanatic. I guess you could say they are sister sites of ours covering those respective teams, and it just lined up perfectly because just got finished playing the Twins heading into this Brewer series. We have a lot to talk to you about, Matt, so thanks a lot for coming on. Big fan of your work.
Yeah, ditto, and anytime.
I think the easiest place to start is right smack dab in the middle of this past series. The Marlins win this series 2 out of 3 against the Twins, but I'll start with you, Isaac, on the moment that kind of swung game 2 of the series was that unconventional, that unusual call. I believe, let me pull up the rule to make sure I have this right. 5.06C6 in the official rule book about this umpire's involvement, where the Marlins had a chance to tie that game up and end up not stranding a runner in scoring position in that ending, losing the middle game of the series. This interrupted on the longest winning streaks in Marlins history on this very bizarre play. And I don't think anybody, not even the crew chief himself, speaking afterwards, seemed to agree with the fact that this rule still exists the way that it does.
Yeah, when things like that start to happen, the win streaks tend to end, unfortunately, and that is something that I have never seen before. The fact that there's no discretion allowed is just sort of frustrating, and it's ridiculous that it's not a thing anymore. I think one of the comparisons that it was given is sort of that runner on first base on a ground rule double where he for sure scores, but he's forced to stay at third. Sort of that rule that just makes no sense given no discretion. It was just talk about a total momentum swing. The Marlins had the game tied. And what's frustrating about it is that regardless if that ball hits him or not, if it rolls to the second baseman, then okay. But that ball's going in center field either way. The game is tied no matter what. And not only did Sanchez not get to score, he had to stay at second base. So just a total momentum shifter for the Marlins who, granted during that 8-game win streak, they had a lot of turning points go their way, a little luck go their way. So I guess finally something went against them. But still, they were in it. They had multiple chances later on in that ball games, even in the 9th inning against Johan Duran. Just they weren't able to get that second run across. But that's going to be, I feel like that moment's going to be played for a long time for the rest of this season because that was such a turning point. They almost tied the franchise record for 9 games straight, won. And that was what was frustrating because it was 111 off the bat by Stowers right up the middle. You got to get out of the way if you're that umpire.
Well, I mean, it's not as easy as you make it out to be, Isaac, to get out of the way of a ball hit that hard. And you used to play baseball, maybe not on the infield, but you should know that. Anyways, what I would say is that your frustration is understandable. What I would also say to play it from the other side is that don't blame umpires in this case. There's a lot of things that umpires can be blamed for. In this case, they're doing their job. They're following a rule. Yeah. There is a rule that says if a ball hits an umpire, no matter where on the field it hit, doesn't matter, that you have to call it a dead ball. And that's exactly what that umpire did.
Right.
No one's arguing that, though. Frustration is not with umpires, and no one's frustration, I don't think yours is to say you, but I don't think anyone's frustration should be with umpires. It should be with the people that made this rule what it is. And I hope that this particular play, and probably a couple of others that we've seen, maybe nothing exactly like this, but I think there's been other examples of plays in the past that we've seen that are like, okay, why did that happen? That could corroborate that semblance of, okay, there should be discretion on where that ball went. The fact that no fielder would have been around it anyways, like no matter what. But let's say that ball went off the guy's foot and it carried him to a second baseman and then there's a runner that gets thrown out. You would want that play to go the other way, right? So you have to kind of see it from both sides. I agree with you that there should be a semblance of discretion, but A, it's not on the umpires, and B, I wouldn't blame that umpire for not getting out of the way.
Right.
I think he tried to, but he's not an athlete.
Well, just to be clear, I'm not faulting the umpires for not changing the rule of baseball and allowing Sanchez to score. I am saying that, like you said, they're at this point in in Major League Baseball year, whatever it is, there should be a little bit of discretion for plays like those, because it's a shame. But again, of course not. They did the right thing. That's why Clayton McCullough didn't even argue. I asked a couple of people. There's nothing you can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do. There's just tough luck. And unfortunately, when there's luck like that, I feel like there is, eventually there's going to be a rule change, I assume, for both that play as well as the automatic double, and the runner has to stop, even though he was going to score 100%. I am not blaming the umpires for not overturning the rule. But you got to do everything you can to get out of the way of that ball, man. I know it's tough. It's 110 off the bat or something. But anyway.
The Marlins win the series anyway. Moving on from that quickly. The Marlins win the series anyway, mainly because they held the Twins to only 3 total runs in those 3 games. From your vantage point, Matt, was that more so about what the Marlins did well on the pitching side, or are they just catching the Twins at a very good time in order to pull that off?
I mean, I think it's got to be some of each, right? This is a really exciting Marlins pitching staff. And I don't know how many times in the last decade we've started a season saying that about the Marlins, but it never seems like by the time you even get to the start of July that that's actually what's happening. Someone's hurt and someone's underperforming and someone else is hurt. And there's been some of that this year, but still the sum total of this pitching staff is pretty electric, and they put that on display. And at the same time, the Twins are flailing, man. The Twins are a team in trouble, a team that probably they may not actually do it, but they badly need to reshuffle their whole core over the next month before the trade deadline. Probably, if you strip the identities from these two teams and just said, watch this series and tell me which one is historically the Miami Marlins and which one's the Minnesota Twins, they're playing a lot like one another right now. The Marlins are surging in a way that is very sort of characteristic of the Twins over the last handful of years. And the Twins are a little bit directionless and a little bit built around players who are clearly not quite living up to what they hoped and in need of a restructuring that might not be coming, which probably sounds awfully familiar to a lot of you guys.
We have to talk about Yuri and what he did today, because this was his 5th start back. His stuff has looked awesome ever since he came back, but this was the one where the results really turned over, where the control turned over, where he did some interesting things pitch mix wise as well, where he just became a fastball slider guy. And that was enough to cruise through 6 innings in a way that maybe had us thinking that they might even send him out to the 7th. So I'll go to you, Carver, because you've been following Yuri's whole journey right here. And we've been waiting for Sandy to have like a dominant start like this all year, coming back from Tommy John. And he hasn't quite. I would say that this was more impressive than even anything that Sandy has done. And to see him less than a month coming off of the IL to really put it all together like that, just amazing. He's still one of the youngest pitchers in the league. And now he seems to be back to what he was pre-surgery.
Yeah, first quality start since August of 2023. Just great. I mean, and this early in the rehab, he's going 6 innings, or not rehab, but comeback, I guess I should say. He's going 6 innings and with 2 pitches, like you said. Like, I think changeup has always kind of been his last pitch, but no curveball, like literally almost no curveball in the start. That pitch is good for him. He's basically, like you said, fastball, slider, elevating fastball, and then just wiping guys out with that ridiculous slider, both sides, doesn't matter. He can go to both sides of the plate with that slider. It's ridiculous. It's a great pitch for him. So to see him do it basically with just the 2 pitches with barely a mix in of the other 2, he could get even better. I mean, I don't think this is the best that we're going to see him. I think he's going to be better when he gets those other 2 pitches back and has them fully in his arsenal. He said kind of in his post game that, he knows the slider is his best pitch. That's great. I think he said the fastball is his best pitch, but best breaker is the slider, obviously. Supreme confidence in both pitches. The velo at 99, dipping down to the mid 80s with the slider. Get back that curveball in the high 70s, and then mixing that changeup. He's going to be even better. I mean, this guy, this isn't the best that we're going to see him. He's going to get better, especially like you said at such a young age. So good, so good. Can't say enough. Yuri is awesome. Just stay healthy. He's going to be fine.
You see some of those orange shirts in the background. There was supposed to be, as of a few weeks ago, this idea about a protest of current Marlins ownership by bringing it back to the colors under the Loria era. And Carver, you put it perfectly in your tweet that I think the winning ways of this team, anybody that may have even been thinking about demonstrating their dissatisfaction in that way, probably in these last couple of weeks changed their mind, because all of a sudden this team is actually on pace to have their second best full season of the Sherman era, and of course trending in the direction. Yes, LMF was there, and I think he's in this chat as well, so we appreciate his support, and I'm glad he had front row seats to watch Yuri. I mean, that turned out well. Protest turning into actually enjoying some very good baseball right there. Yeah, overall, all 3 games in this one. We spent a while talking about Eddie on the previous show, so even though as amazing as he was, I don't want to spend too much time like hammering the same points, but Edward Cabrera was as good as we've seen him ever in that first game of the series. And then Jansen Junk in the middle so far. I want to quickly pull up Jansen Junk because this is my first time looking at his baseball savant sliders from this season to get that overview about how he's pitching. He has one of the best FIPS, fielder independent pitching, in all of baseball this year. And a lot of it is because he doesn't walk anybody. And a lot of it is because he doesn't give up home runs, and he's still missing bats. But you also see gives up so much hard contact.
Yeah.
And like watching his starts, Isaac, where are we with Jansen Junk? Because there are stretches where it looks like the Marlins found this gem, and then there are other stretches where you get really worried that teams are just going to he's too hittable and like too much around the zone. He's in a complicated. It's been weird. It's been impressive, but it's been weird.
I mean, he's impressing the hell out of me. I think I forgot the amount of batters he's faced without walking a guy. That's been the most impressive part. I know he had that, the little bit of a clunker in San Francisco, but he has been outstanding. He's been everything that Miami could have asked for. I did not have high hopes. He was pitching pretty well in Jacksonville, of course, and which merited his call-up or his contract selection, but he has been performing outstanding, sort of how Connor Gillespie was pitching early in his Marlins career early this season. But he has done everything that Miami could have asked for, even going deep-ish into games, which is not something that I had expected him to do. But yeah, I think you could see him being in this rotation for a very long time if you're a Marlins fan. I don't think he has given you any reason to doubt him or his stuff. Like you said, the hard contact is a little bit of a red flag, but if he's not walking guys and he's not letting the ball go out of the ballpark, then you got some sort of floor there as a starting pitcher. And yeah, it's been fascinating to watch Peter Bendix just continuing to do these things. But yeah, as of now, I think you see him throughout the rest of the year in the rotation.
It is impressive how he's like attacking the zone so much that these hitters just aren't trying to take advantage of that. Like it's that impressive to me. Like this guy's been, it's now a couple starts now that he's had, and obviously those long relief outings, like he's clearly attacking the strike zone to a certain level that not many others do. Hence why he hasn't walked someone in God knows how long. And like you would think it would be a little bit longer at bats. Like for the most part, they are making him work a little bit, but like outside of that, it's like he's just like yesterday was great. Like he was just mowing through guys, and obviously sucks that they lost that game and the way they lost it, but like he was awesome. Like that was the best start of the season for him easily. Like 6 innings, it's a career high, season high, 7 strikeouts. Like he was great. Yet like, and I know the Twins are kind of faltering a little bit, but like you would think these hitters would take more advantage of it. Hence why he's getting hit so hard. Like I don't know. I feel like it's been certainly like I think there is some like not luckiness to it. But like you would think the approach would change once you start watching a little more, video on this guy and notice like this guy's attacking the zone. Let's make him work and let's knock him out in 4 innings, 5 innings. Like idea, like, but hey, man, if it's working, let it keep working. He's not getting a lot of whiffs either, which is worth noting, and that's why we're seeing such a hard hit rate or hard hit percentage. And he puts the ball in play a lot. Yesterday was kind of like not an anomaly, but something you don't see usually with the 7 strikeouts. But aside from that, like Isaac said it, he's been awesome. Like it's another one of those Peter Bendix finds. Like we see him, Ronnie Henriquez, another one of those finds. Like it's a lot of the guys who Peter Bendix just claims off waivers, and all of a sudden they're really good. And there's a reason why he claims them. And I mean, we saw this last year with Cronin and Fauché. This year it's Junk. At one point, it was like Gillespie early on, not with the team anymore, and Henriquez now in the bullpen. So credit to Peter Bendix for what he's been able to do.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have gotten to talk to Junk at all, but he was with the Brewers for much of last year. Right. And talking to him in spring training and talking to people around the team, they were really excited about him. And some injury stuff kind of set him back. And then ultimately, everything just sort of spiraled on him, and it didn't work out for him there. But he's a guy who's from the Pacific Northwest, so he sort of ended up at Driveline organically. He didn't have to really go hunting for them. They were the first place he could find to train really well. And what a cerebral, thoughtful guy. Not just, guys have been trained to speak the language of the numbers these days, but he really is engaged with it on that second level. And he loves to make quick adjustments. I think the raw stuff is never going to be, he is always trying to optimize it, but he's always running into some hard caps on just how nasty he can actually be. And he's a little bit stubborn about filling up that zone. So you are going to see teams adjust to him, and that hard contact's going to start going over the wall some. That's happened to him multiple times over his career. But he'll also keep adjusting. He's very resilient, like I said, intelligent, and there is a baseline of talent there just to be able to throw strikes that by no means are the Marlins the first ones to see it. Hopefully they're the ones who can help him sort of, now you've been through a couple of cycles, you've found more things that don't work, and eventually you're going to find that thing that does on a consistent and lasting basis.
I really want to bring up the Brewers here as we take a look at the NL wildcard standings. We've reached that area where the Marlins are within striking distance enough that I could bring up these standings and not feel like a jerk for doing it every single time. As you see, the Brewers right there, their game I think is delayed tonight. They're about to play the Mets, right? Aren't they facing the Mets? So they have a chance to kind of toggling back and forth with them at the top of the wild card race in the National League right here. Matt, I know you wrote something for Brewer Fanatic just this morning about how they're in a position to be really aggressive at this deadline if they want to. Can you just fill us in? It seems like things are going really well at both the big league level and then down on the farm as well.
Yeah, this is a really, really well-run operation. I think the envy of a lot of teams around the league right now in that they don't have a ton of star power. In fact, their best players, probably William Contreras or Jackson Chourio. Chourio's going through some sophomore adjustments. Contreras is playing through a broken middle finger on his left hand, which obviously you can survive that. It's not his throwing hand when he's behind the plate, but it has sapped some of his power this year. So they're without sort of the traditional anchors of a good team, but their depth is so good. And they just keep finding guys and creating guys and patiently waiting for guys who do eventually turn the corner because they're very well coached too. And at this point, they also have one of the 3 or 4 best farm systems in the major leagues. The combination of all that means they've got a lot of depth. They've got guys coming back from injuries as opposed, faster than they're losing people. They are getting people back. You guys will see Brandon Woodruff pitch for the first time on a big league mound since the last time he was in Miami in September of 2023. He'll pitch this weekend, and they don't have a lot of urgent needs. What they have is a lot of capital if they want to go out and make a huge splash on the trade market. It's not a year where that's easy to do, but if any team can do it, it's the Brewers, and they don't have a bunch of other stuff that they sort of need to fill in and spend on. They can either, go big or sit back and let what is already a pretty deep and well-rounded roster keep filling in and push toward the playoffs that way.
As Brian brings up in the chat, they are a low payroll operation. And even though people constantly make the Rays Marlins comparison, in some ways the Brewers are a model for what the Marlins are trying to do, where they're playoff contenders every single year. And they do it in a way where they're not just producing a lot of homegrown talent, but guys with really high ceilings. Of course, Jacob Mizrachi being the latest one to emerge and capture everybody's imagination. I was looking through Brewers stuff, and they're not going to face Miz in this series. They are going to face Chad Patrick, and that might seem like a random place to start, but I didn't realize how productive a season he's been having. This is a guy that's been in the rotation almost the entire year. It is it's a mid-3s ERA, and like the rookie of the year race is a big talking point in Miami because they have so many rookies on their team this year. People love Augustin Ramirez. We're going to talk about him in a second. In Milwaukee, is Chad Patrick getting any rookie of the year buzz? It's such an underwhelming race in the NL this year. And this is a guy that pretty quietly is a fixture in a good team's rotation.
I mean, you want a testament to what the Brewers are. Chad Patrick is closer to losing his spot in the rotation than he is to being their sort of rookie of the year favorite. I think many Brewers fans have already turned their attention to, could Jacob Mizorowski charge toward that award? Now, awards are awards, right? This team's playing for bigger prizes than that. They want to make the playoffs. Patrick has been really impressive. It's mainly an arsenal driven by a really good cutter, and he's had to learn to work other things off of that. He's just now, I think, getting comfortable with a slider it's really the second different shape he's tried with that pitch this year. He kind of ended up in the rotation by default. They had a crisis of injuries early in the year that compelled them to make this sort of half panic trade for Quinn Priester, who will pitch Friday and has been really, really good for them. But Patrick sort of slid in just when there were so many injuries that there were no good alternatives. And he's impressed enough to stick around all this time and put up good numbers. He doesn't miss a ton of bats, and there can even be some hard contact. What he's benefited from is the stuff's getting better over time. He's already ticked up maybe a mile per hour from last year across the board, and that obviously helps. And B, he's pitching in front of a great defense, and he can, sometimes, frankly, just left fielder Isaac Collins, who is just a pickup out of nowhere for them, has turned into one of the best defenders in the league at that position. And Patrick has this habit of giving up fierce line drives to left that Collins just appears out of nowhere on your TV screen to snag. So get ready to be frustrated by that at least once this weekend. But yeah, Patrick's a really good distillation of what the Brewers do well, in that he may not be even in their top 7 if everybody's healthy in their starting pitching depth chart, and yet a lot of teams would love to have him. It would even be okay handing him the ball in a playoff game if it came to that.
Matt, it would be a Marlins Brewers stream if we didn't just touch on one of these players, and that's Christian Yelich. Obviously, we know him very well. You guys have grown enamored of that guy. The production isn't quite where it was in those 2 MVP caliber seasons, one where he actually won the award, but he does seem to be sort of back to, the well above average hitter that we know from those 2021, 2022 seasons. What have you seen from Christian Yelich this year? Because I can't quite put my finger on exactly where he is right now, but he's hitting the ball great.
Yeah. He had season-ending back surgery in July of last year. And the big question for a lot of people was just, would he come back with any of his power remaining? I think everybody watching this stream knows that it's not exactly an orthodox setup swing. It's pretty in its own way, but it's unusual. It's always had this sort of stiffness to it, and you wondered, could he really get the bat speed back? Could he be the same athlete on the other side of that surgery? I think we're finding out that he can, but you're still seeing age show up a little bit. So this is a guy who, he still hits the ball on the ground a lot. He still does not pull the ball in the air very much at all, but he's finding that power to the opposite field like you're used to seeing from him. He's been even more patient than usual, really working counts. And I think that's the wisdom of being a veteran is, look, I have a certain number of good swings in me every day. The back, he has to go through some treatment to really get it firing on all cylinders every day, but he can get there. They've also pretty much made him a full-time DH. He really never sees the outfield anymore. That's taken some pressure off the body, and I think preserved him. We've even seen him out there stealing bases, running well, moving well in all dimensions. They're just not asking as much of him, and he's benefited as much as anything from that, just a lighter workload.
For the most part, I know he's been incredible. It's just, I know he's been healthy most of his major league career as well. It's just a shame because it was all the way back in 2014 in his sophomore season with Miami. He already was starting to deal with that lower back issue. Yeah. And it's going to be just sort of a what if thing with Christian, unfortunately, because you mentioned that he's playing almost every single day, but it's unfortunate. I think that's sort of taking its toll on what I guess is now 33-year-old outfielder. But I'm sure based on the trade return that the Brewers gave, I don't think there's any concern with that.
No, and if you ask Brewers fans, they've got a whole what if about he hit a foul ball when he was on his way to possibly his second MVP award in 2019.
Yeah, we were there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Boy, that place is a house of horrors for the Brewers when it comes to injuries. But
it really is.
But I think he's definitely one of those guys where it's so impressive what he's been able to do, given that we know we're not seeing the best of all possible versions of his career. That's just never been really allowed to him. And yet he's been fortunate and just talented enough and hardworking enough to find his way to a really impressive and consistent career. And I think this is one of the most impressive seasons yet, just in that anytime a guy has back surgery, you don't know what's going to come out the other side. And he hasn't been exactly the same player. He probably never will be again, but it's still a really productive hitter.
Yep. One of the best pure hitters I'd ever seen in a Marlins uniform in a long time. Special hitter.
I think I could ask you a last question just overall on this team, just because of how you're speaking of how fans view the team. There's a lot of questions on how fans view the Marlins, as we all know, year to year or ownership to ownership, I guess I could point out. They're in an interesting spot because they're in a wild card spot right now, right, as of today. But as Eli pointed out, it's not a sure thing. They have a decent farm system that they're starting to draw from. You mentioned Mizorowski. They have Made. They're at the top. Like they have a decent farm system that looks like it could matriculate for a few years to come. Where do you think they are in terms of, hey, this year's the year? They've never won a World Series. They've never won a National League title. They haven't won a title since 1982. Where are they in terms of this is the year, or is it a few years down the road?
I don't think the Brewers ever think of it as this is the year, like in an all-in kind of way. And, Eli, you alluded to a piece I wrote at the site this morning about how they might really go big and fish in the deep end of a trade pond. It wouldn't be for a rental. It probably wouldn't even be for a guy with just a year and a half of control. They are always thinking long-term windows, staying open. We saw them trade Josh Hader when the team was competitive in the middle of 2022 with a year and a half left on his deal. They trade guys a year early rather than letting them walk unless they're really crucial to the fabric of the clubhouse, like Willie Adames was last year. They're going to continue to be that team. They're not going to sell the farm to load up for any one season. But I think they do recognize that Yelich is not going to be great forever, and they still owe him money for quite a while. So it's a good thing to make some hay while the sun is shining, while he's hitting well, and you can still have him in the middle of your order. They're not running out of team control on Contreras, for instance, and Mizorowski's healthy. I think we all know that's not guaranteed to stay that way forever. So they'll be the same amount of aggressive that they are pretty much every year, which is frustrating to a lot of Brewers fans, but it's also why this team never really slides backward. They're always around, even when you expect them to take a step back. And it's because they're never pushing chips all the way into the middle. They're always thinking about this year and next and the one after. So.
Yeah, I will pull up. We usually look at the way that we time these streams. We usually look at the starting lineups for the series openers. In this case, because we're recording this early, I'm instead just going to pull up a more generic look about all the hitters on the active rosters for both of these teams right now, without knowing in particular who's going to be on the lineup one way or the other. But Kevin, this is the first time, this feels like more so than every other time we do these streams, the contrast between the actual measurables on the Marlins hitters is so much more red than on the Brewers side, even facing a team that is better than them one way or the other. I think it speaks to, we'll get into the Brewers side in a moment, but it speaks to how this Marlins offense is actually good and deep, at least as of late, like especially compared to what we expected it would be.
Yeah, wow. I did not even notice until you pulled it up. And I think a big reason for that is just how hard the Marlins are hitting the ball, too. Like you look at just the top three, Sanchi, Stowers, and Augustine, and even Dane to a certain extent. Like they're hitting the ball hard. Wagaman too, surprisingly. It's not as red as, obviously Stowers, but like it's a big reason for it. They're slugging the ball well. They're driving in runs, and that's a big reason for. Obviously, the road trip was huge. They scored more than 5 runs in almost every single game of that road trip, which I think is a big reason why you're seeing a lot of that red. And I think they're being a little bit more aggressive on the base running. That's why you look towards the bottom. A lot more guys showing the sprint speeds and the red sprint speed. Like Derek Hill's very quietly, very fast. I did not know that. Connor Norby's down there. Sanoha too. Like the Marlins are playing some good baseball right now, and I think that merits the red on the Baseball Savant graphic. And Augustine, obviously, with the home run today. Stowers had an awesome series as well. Back-to-back games with the home run in the first and the second game. So, yeah, I mean, the Marlins are playing good ball, and that's why you're seeing the numbers improve, obviously. And I think we've mentioned it many times, but with Stowers specifically, like, he could just start booking the ticket to Atlanta. He's probably going to be their all-star. He's been awesome. And, now that we're in the month of the trade deadline, I don't think they should trade him, keep him around, if anything, up until the offseason. But Carver's mentioned this before. There's no untouchable, but Stowers feels like one of those quote-unquote untouchable players for the Marlins, and it's a good guy to have around for. I think he's around for a couple more years, and if the Marlins continue to play a good brand of ball, who knows? But, yeah, Stowers has been fun to watch, and Augustine as well. And we're talking about NL Rookie of the Year. Like, he's got to be up there for that award easily. Like, he's been awesome. Aside just the numbers on offense, obviously defensively it hasn't looked great, but Augustine definitely a guy who will be at least within the top 3 of the voting. I would say top 3, top 4. Like, he's got to be up there. And then Sanchi, if they do trade him, he'll make a team pretty happy this upcoming deadline.
This is our final stream before the full all-star reveal show. That should be on Sunday. So that's when we'll find out for sure that it's Stowers. There's really no alternative at this point, just because of how well he has rebounded these last few weeks. The fact that
Cabrera.
He's in the line. That, I don't know.
They could throw the curveball and it's Cabrera all of a sudden. He deserves it too. I mean, he's been pitching very well.
He's been great. He did miss those first few weeks of the season, and of course he was bad initially upon returning in a way that I don't think he's quite there. But it wouldn't be the craziest thing. He's reached Edward Cabrera's kind of. We were thinking a few weeks ago when it was a total toss-up how maybe he pulls the 2019 Sandy, where that year Sandy made it in as an all-star, even with a really underwhelming first half of the season, just because by default. And I mean, Eddie is pitching just as well, if not better, than Sandy was during that all-star. So it wouldn't be the most embarrassing, unprecedented selection if that's what happened. But I alluded to it, Matt, that these guys are good and these guys score runs, but they don't do it by necessarily crushing the ball. The Marlins are more vulnerable than any team in recent memory in terms of allowing stolen bases. And I think that should be something that the Brewers take advantage of, right?
Yeah. It's going to be a track meet if they can get on base. And honestly, they probably will get on base. This is a really effective offense, and they can be maddening to play against because they do, they use the bunt to sort of pull the defense out of position and then find holes to slap the ball right through. They make a lot of contact. They do have, the power will catch you by surprise because, as you point out, these aren't guys who are wired around the ability to hit the ball hard. But a lot of them do have that ability when you make a mistake. And they're just really predicated. Now we have attack angle and attack direction, all these next level of stats. The Brewers are the most opposite field oriented team in the league. And it's not especially close. They're always taking it the other way. Even when they pull the ball, it often is coming off the bat at strange angles, and they're just a really tough team to defend. Then they get on base, and pretty much everyone in the lineup, save Rhys Hoskins, can run. So, yeah, it's a tough team to play against, not in the same way that a lot of teams in the modern game are scary. They're not going to have 4 home runs in a game. They're going to steal 6 bases in a game sometimes. And, yeah, as you point out, the struggles the Marlins have had this year, that might show up. The key will be to try and keep them off the bases. Easier said than done, but yeah.
Yeah, the thing about their offense that just absolutely astounds me is how high their team, like not only the team BABIP is high, but like individually, some of their BABIPs are like extremely high. But I think you mentioned it perfectly. It's because of where they're making contact, how they're making contact, and how they're going to different fields. as a team to have a 294 BABIP where 300 is average, that's pretty high. So, I mean, you have guys sitting there at 312 for Yelich. Like, there's guys in the 330s. Like, these guys are none of, I don't necessarily think it's luck, but I think it's how they're making contact, as you alluded to, and where the ball is falling that is allowing them to just have consistency. And I think it's just such a much different offense than what we've seen from the Marlins. So two totally different offenses, I think, matching up in this series. So I think it's going to be fun.
I agree.
I wanted to reference this. I can't verify this. It seems plausible that they're in the neighborhood with this. Brewers shortstops hitting about as poorly as any single position on any team in MLB. But it reminds me because something else that you wrote, Matt, pretty recently was about Joey Ortiz and how he is. But he's let me verify this. He is the one. I'm not mixing it up, right? It's Ortiz that's playing shortstop, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's okay. So I'm glad that that's lined up because last year he was at third base while Willie Adames was at short, but now he's at short. Anyway, you wrote about how, as awful as the numbers look overall, he has turned it around recently. As underwhelming as from macro it looks, he's a guy that is probably a lot more dangerous at this moment in time than he would be earlier in the year.
Yeah, this is the wide number of different ways in which the Brewers do things right. And I was, they're right, I'm wrong very often. Go back 6-8 weeks, and I was wondering aloud just how long you can continue the Joey Ortiz experiment. He was the worst hitter in the league for the first 6 weeks of the season. And for the last 6 weeks, it's been like a 760 OPS with really good gap power. They just waited and waited and waited and trusted that this guy who had about that kind of line last year, save for some time where he was diminished by a neck injury he was playing through, they just trusted that would come back. And then it did. He had to make a big adjustment. He was way too passive. Even last year when he was having success, he was way too passive in the strike zone. The Brewers like patience. They really like, let the ball travel, take an extra pitch as opposed to swinging too often. He took that to too much of an extreme. It was really hurting him this year, even as he tried to make the adjustment. But now he's found the sweet spot. Now he is going and getting the ball. He's swinging a lot more, and he's capable of using the whole field even when he's being more aggressive. And it showed up. I mean, it's just something's clicked, and he's not a superstar by any means. But I said this the other day that basically now that he and Caleb Durbin have sort of found their stride, it's just from the top of the lineup to the bottom, 760 OPSs. And so they're all slightly different shapes, but it's a whole lot of the same guy. And when you can just chain that much depth together, it's really hard to keep them off the board for very long. They're not probably going to score 11 on you, but you're not going to shut them out or even hold them to 1 or 2 very often either.
As we wind this down shortly, brought him up briefly earlier in the stream about Brandon Woodruff. This is finally making his season debut after a lot of starts and stops with coming back from what was originally a shoulder injury with him, right? That kind of derailed his career.
Yeah, a shoulder capsule injury, which a lot of pitchers don't even make it back from. Right. And if you do, it's often 18 months. They had hoped he'd be back by May of this year, and then setback with something with an ankle, a line drive hit him in the elbow. I mean, baseball tried everything to get rid of him, and he's made it back. And it's going to be a really emotional moment for the whole team and for Woodruff himself. When he last left a big league mound against the Marlins in that September, I don't even think he knew it was going to be for the last time for that long. He was hoping that he'd be able to make it back and pitch in the playoffs that year. And then he couldn't. And a year later, or almost, I guess it's 20 something months later, he's finally back, and he's much diminished. It's not the same guy anymore, but it's going to be a big lift for the team just to have him there. He's a humongous leader in that clubhouse, and there's something really poignant about it coming full circle at Lone Depot Field.
His last rehab start came against the Marlins AAA affiliate in Jacksonville. That's why I brought him up, because I did see part of that outing live, and I kind of reached the same frank conclusion that looked diminished. And look, even for somebody that is, especially for somebody that is already, it didn't look like somebody that necessarily was fully ready to be back in the big leagues. I guess we'll see how it goes. I've been surprised in the past by how guys maybe look in that environment, and then maybe they flip some kind of switch once they get back to the big leagues, or if they do, somebody with his resume. I mean, there are things I guess he could do to try to compensate for the diminished stuff. It did surprise me a little bit, though, having watched a good chunk of that outing, his most recent one, and then wow, they're actually going to plug him back into the rotation on this good team. Because again, just revisiting what you brought up, the rotation depth is such a strength for this team. I don't think the Brewers, they're not going into this like feeling sure that he's going to be with them the rest of the way. This has to be a situation where I imagine they're going to take it just a few starts at a time and then reassess. And I mean, maybe there comes a point where they have to make some sort of pretty difficult decision in terms of whether he's on the roster at all as we go down the stretch. If they just have so many options that look better than he does at this particular stage of his career.
Yeah, he and this team mean a lot to each other at this point. He's been in the organization for over a decade, I think, or certainly it's been 10 years if it hasn't been longer. And I think that they've come this far. They were not going to not at least try it. This is an injury that, frankly, not many pitchers have come back on the other side of. And you could count on one hand the number who have come back and been what they were before they suffered it. You know it's going to be different. And he has reinvented his pitch mix a little bit. He's trying to do different things. So they're aware of that. I think for sure he'll get this start and another one before the All-Star break, and they'll just assess after that. And my expectation is they'll stretch it out longer than a lot of people from outside the organization would probably understand, just because it really is, it's such an important relationship between player and team. And they non-tendered him the winter after he suffered this injury, and then he was a free agent for a couple of months, but they end up re-signing this deal that was sort of backloaded and incentive laden. And I think they're going to try it. They're going to try it for a little bit longer than makes sense. That's just the nature of where they are. And they feel like they can afford that because they also know they have good options to pivot right back to, guys who can be sent to the minors without wounding any egos or losing anybody from the 40-man roster. And they'll make it work. But you're right, it's not guaranteed to last all season. And it'd be a mild surprise, I think, if he pitches for them in the playoffs, for instance. But, you know, they'll give it a shot and see if even the stuff comes along a little more once he gets back to the big leagues and he can sort of settle into a routine with the parent club.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend much time on Andrew Vaughn here, but this was a reminder that they did make that trade for him, the former first-round pick who flamed out with the White Sox. For people wondering, he has an 870 OPS, AAA Nashville so far. Pretty small sample, but it's I think that's worth
his average exit velocity also jumped like 4 miles an hour when he changed from the Charlotte Knights uniform for the White Sox to the Nashville Sounds with the Brewers. They probably are not going to successfully fix Andrew Vaughn, but yeah, there are a lot of, it's a short list of organizations you'd rather go get a change of scenery guy from than the White Sox. You trust that you're probably going to be able to unlock something that they've missed because they miss stuff. Right. And so the Brewers are going to give that a shot at least, because Rhys Hoskins is going to leave as a free agent this winter and they'll need a first baseman one way or another. So
just a quick overview of the probable starters in the series. Woodruff, as we mentioned in that series finale, Quinn Priester and Sandy on Friday, then Chad Patrick and Cal Quantrill in the middle game, Eddie pitching again on Sunday. Yeah, Carver, I won't ask you again about Eddie because we talk about him so much, such a divisive player, and he's just been on. It'll be tough to. I don't know what he's going to do for an encore coming off his most recent outing, which was amazing. I guess we'll check in with Sandy because he's coming off a bit of a step back in that Diamondbacks outing where he allowed 7 earned runs, a couple big homers. This is something that we really probably have to check in every few days just because of what he's meant to this organization. But yeah, where are you currently leaning in terms of the likelihood of him still being a Marlin at the end of the month, the way that he's progressing, the way that the team itself is going, and the idea about whether that that push and pull between whether they think it would even be worth it to deal him in his current situation when the overall numbers are still kind of iffy. And I know your standard for what kind of return they would need is pretty high. And right now, it's hard to say whether they'd actually be able to realistically get that kind of return for him.
Yeah, I think every start is huge. I think this one's going to be really big. I think if he lets up another blow up start, he's not leaving. In this outing, not that this outing is the full tipping point, but I think it's going to come down, like I said, to the last couple starts. Is he going to show consistently that he's the Sandy of old, or is he going to be this guy that we saw early this season that really, really struggles, particularly with batted ball contact? So I think he's in a good spot for this particular start because this Brewers team, as you just showed in the splits, doesn't hit the ball particularly hard. They just find holes, as we just talked about. So if he could stay away from that against a lineup that hasn't really hammered the baseball, I think the consistency of contact that he's let up is really his main issue. That's never been Sandy before. So if he can start to fix that in terms of the consistency of contact that he's letting up and these blow up starts that he has, then he probably will go, I would say. If he doesn't, if he has one more start where he lets up another 6 or 7 runs, I think he's gonna stay here. Because the Marlins, like you said, won't get the return that they want, nor should they at that point, because they're going to be selling low on a guy who's still on a pretty damn team-friendly deal. So I keep him if that's the case. If he lets another bad start, say in this one or the last one before the deadline, I think he's got one more, if I'm not wrong. After this, should be one more, I think, before All-Star break, I think, if I'm not wrong. Then he stays. If not, like if he has another blow-up start, then he's going to stay here. If he comes out and he's the Sandy of old and he has 2 quality starts, it's going to be a lot easier for the Marlins to get what they are going to want for this player. I don't think they should sell low just because of the friendly contract that he has. They should not sell low on Sandy. You stick with it. You have confidence in the fact that he's going to return to form. He's, of course, coming back from injury. We all know it. So I think if he cannot garner the return that they will rightfully want, he stays as a Marlin. Where am I leaning? I'm leaning towards the fact that he will stay here right now. But like I said, I think it's like a 60-40 right now, honestly, Eli. But I would slightly lean towards the fact that he remains a Marlin, but we'll see.
I wanted quickly to get your thoughts on this, Matt, because in addition to the Twins and the Brewers, you cover the Cubs as well, North Side Baseball, and they're the one team that they're in a position where they're definitely going to be buyers at the deadline, and they're a team that has a more acute need for starting pitching. Yeah, what is your personal interest in? What is your assessment of where Sandy is at? Is he a team that a buying team would you be interested in a team like the Cubs actually making that move and hoping they can make the right tweaks for him down the stretch, or is there too much concern just about him not getting results to this point in the season?
I think among people who cover the Cubs or pay close attention to the Cubs, I'm probably closer to the low end in my confidence in the Cubs to get the most out of a player like Sandy at the stage that he's at right now. So that would color my particular, appetite to do that, just because I'm not sure I trust their personnel to unlock him. In fact, I might trust the Marlins more than the Cubs at this particular moment. Daniel Moscos was a real good hire. But I think one thing I wonder is, could this come down to how other teams break in terms of whether they're willing to sell? Are the Royals willing to sell Chris Bubich? Do the Angels fall out of contention and consider selling Jose Soriano? Does some kind of high octane, high upside guy that someone could pay a big price for, thinking that they're going to get a whole lot out of by sort of, again, unlocking that person, does that kind of person come onto the market, or does it not materialize anywhere else? Because I feel like Peter Bendix is not going to trade Sandy unless he gets a certain price. He's not going to, he's not going to say, I'm selling no matter what. I'm going to go get the best offer. It's, you got to clear this line, right? I think whether that line gets cleared might depend on who else ends up being available and what, where other teams feel like they can or can't shop. The Cubs should absolutely be in the market for a player like Sandy Alcantara. I'm not sure they do as much with him as they should. But someone should pay a great price for the guy. I don't know how you guys felt about it, but I didn't even think he looked all that terrible against Arizona. It was just one of those games where a couple of pitches you'd really want back. Obviously, you can't afford to just have that happen every start, but he doesn't look fundamentally diminished to me. This is not like a Brandon Woodruff situation. I think the guy's still there. The talent's still there. So I'd be holding out for a big package if I were Peter Bendix. I'd be interested in paying it if I were a team that I trusted that I could get the most out of Sandy down the stretch. I'm not sure whether the Cubs are going to turn out to be that team or not, but it's certainly, that the fit is obvious and interesting.
Right.
You've heard the Dodgers mentioned too. We've already heard that the Dodgers are mentioned. So I think, and I wrote this in our roundtable, that where do you think Sandy winds up at the end of the year? I did say the 60-40 before, but I think if he does get traded, like if he comes out, like I said, and has those Sandy-esque starts that we're so used to as Marlins fans, at least one of the next two, the Dodgers have always been a team that will not shy away from trading prospects to go for the right now. And they have a pretty damn good system right now, particularly with their two outfielders. They have a couple of good pitchers as well, DePaula and Zaire Hope. Like they could be ready in this 3-year window that we're thinking that the Marlins are going to be back in terms of serious contention. Those are pieces that you want to have. So if you can get one, or I don't think they could get both for Sandy. If you get one of them plus a couple of other of their top 10, that's a trade that they do. Can they get it? That's the question. Or will the Dodgers, as others have said, take their business elsewhere? So it just depends, I think, as others have said, on terms of who else is available. Where do the Dodgers spend their money? Where do they spend their prospects? Where do they spend their capital? If Sandy is that guy, these next two starts, we should really pay attention to them, because if he is that guy, I think that he is well in their realm of conversation. If a team does trade for Sandy, I would put the Dodgers at the top of the board, I think, over the Cubs.
We are going to be checking on this constantly between now and the deadline. Of course, fishonfirst.com. All of our streams will be checking in and microanalyzing how Sandy is doing and what the Marlins could get in return. So with that being said, heading to our final segment now, it is prediction time.
This is prediction time.
I think we're going to win a lot of games, a lot more games than you think we're going to win this.
It ages better and better for Bruce as we get deeper into this season. They are exceeding expectations in that regard so far. An updated look at our leaderboard this season, where we predict how many games the Marlins are going to win in a series, who's going to be the series MVP as determined by win probability added. This is the leaderboard with our staffers, our live stream guests, and our super subscribers. And for the look, it is getting really tight at the top, with Kevin gaining very recently, now just 2 off the lead. I'm above that cutoff. I've been doing better lately to get myself somewhat in the picture, and it's a long season to go. And we are recording the stream so early that people have more than 24 hours to get their picks in at fishonfirst.com or in our Discord server if they so choose to do so. And we'll keep tracking them on our leaderboard all season long. And I enjoy doing it in the high times and in the low times, but especially in moments like this, it is very fun to keep track of all this stuff. That being said, I laid it out, Matt, pretty simple. Just how many games you think, how do you think it's going to go in terms of wins in this 3-game series? And then the MVP could come from either team. It could be a pitcher or a hitter. Last series, Marlins pitcher shoved, but people naturally lean towards picking hitters. So they missed out on Edward Cabrera and they missed out on Yuri Perez. And it was a total mess to grade that, but you are allowed to pick a pitcher if you really do think they're going to shove in this instance. So let me just cue up the music. And we'll start with Alex Carver on this one, just to give an example of how it's done.
Yeah, sure. So I think that the Marlins keep this going against a team that doesn't hit the ball particularly hard, as I said, against a team that has high BABIPs. This pitching, at least Edward, has been awesome. Sandy, we really, really hope that he's going to return to form. He's, I think, started to do so. Just needs to really avoid the hard contact. Again, this team doesn't hit the ball hard. So I will give it to the Marlins, 2 out of 3. And shout out to Daniel Alvarez. I'm not missing out this time. Edward Cabrera is the MVP.
All right. Go ahead, Matt. Just like that.
Yeah, I think it's probably the Marlins kind of caught the right part of the Brewers rotation. The Marlins are the home team here. I'm going to say the Marlins do take 2 and 3. It'll probably be games 2 and 3 of the series if I were asked to pick them out. But obviously that can break either way. And I'll say Kyle Stowers comes up with a a couple of key hits. That's how they end up winning 2 instead of it breaking the other way.
No, I'm going to lean on the pessimistic side from Miami's perspective. I'll have the Brewers taking 2 out of 3 in this series. I'm a big fan of this team and the way that they play. Naturally, it's going to be close games. The Marlins only play close games, it seems, at least when they're winning. It's always extremely tight. I think they pick up 1, but end up losing the series. I'll go with Bryce Terang as a series MVP in this case. Really, any Brewers left-handed batter is an interesting pick, just knowing how righty dominant the Marlins staff is as a whole. And even though we don't really count the base running towards it, but Terang is very impactful as a base stealer as well. And I think that's certainly going to help Milwaukee take this series. But then again, I'm bucking recent history. The Marlins have won 4 series in a row. So this would be a letdown compared to what they've done recently. And if they defy the odds, I just know you guys in the comments and watching are going to be all the more fired up about it. So let's see if they can prove me wrong. That's our stream, FOF Live, at an unconventional time, but we got a good crowd in here. And thanks everybody for commenting along throughout it, along with Eli Sussman, Matt Trueblood, awesome guest, Alex Carver. Earlier we had Kevin and Isaac as well. And so we'll be back at a more conventional time prior to the next series opener. And yeah, keep following what we do between now and then. Enjoy your 4th of July and that entire weekend. Head on to aboutthefans.com to pick out our merch. Use the promo code FOF10 to get yourself a discount. So thanks for supporting what we do. And as always, go Fish.
Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.